Chapter 86. Spring, Come Hither. 4. On the day the snowstorm hit, the holidays with wholly empty academic schedules are slowly coming to an end. The days where I could use the whole day solely for my growth and training are also nearing completion. This week is the final sprint. Once the semester starts, there will be a limit to intensive training. At best, I'll have time to contract a medium-tier spirit with Yenika, or squeeze in study time in the hours remaining after returning home from school. Physical training has become virtually meaningless. I'm focused on maintaining the status quo. When I used to bottom out my physical strength, a few days of training would at least show a slight increase in related stats. Now, whether it's due to reaching the limits of my body's capacity or something else, there's barely any change. For Ed Rothtaylor, who has no innate physical talent, it feels like I've trained up to the limits permitted by my body. I have managed to raise myself to a quite well-trained level, even among ordinary men. Getting to this point is already a significant improvement. To increase my specs from here, I need to invest time into specialized areas, not just mindlessly repeat the same training. Magic engineering and spiritual studies. These two alone still feel insufficient. Within the myriad skills available in the accursed swordsmanship from Sylvania, these two are indeed the best combination to complement each other's weaknesses. However, perfect doesn't exist in this world. I'll need to add something else to truly stand out post-graduation. Life skill proficiency details. Grade: Intermediate Master. Specialized fields: Carpentry Dexterity Level 15. Design Level 11. Gathering Level 13. Woodworking Level 15. Stonemasonry Level 8. Hunting Level 14. Fishing Level 12. Cooking Level 7. Repairing Level 5. Advanced Production Skill Slots. Spirit-Infused Techniques. Proficiency: 23. Power Amplification: 4. Infusion Success Rate: 92%. Fire Spirit Techniques Proficiency: 6. Wind Spirit Techniques Proficiency: 3. Contracted Spirits. Lower Fire Spirit Muck. Spirit Affinity: 12. Spiritual Comprehension: 12. Unique Skills: Fire's Blessing, Explosive Pact. High Wind Spirit Merelda. Spirit Affinity: 4. Spiritual Comprehension: 3. Unique Skills: Wolf of Wind's Blessing, Rising Currents. Advanced Production Skill Slots. Magic Engineering Techniques. Proficiency: 4. Understanding of Magic Engineering Artifacts: 5. Quick Crafting: 3. Collected Crafting Formulas. Weak Wind Dispenser Level 1. Mountain Echo Noise Generator Level 1. Reactive Automatic Mana Chessboard Level 1. Greenhouse Crystal Bead Level 1. Blue Magic Artifact Level 1. Grappler Hand Level 1. Kragel's Magic Ink Level 1. Light Sphere Level 1. Anya's Fearful Fire Level 1. Telos's Luminous Blessing Level 1. Lightning Struck Millennial Wood Staff Unfashionable. Gluckzai Unfashionable. Dulheim Hourglass Unfashionable. As the ground neared after sliding down the rope, I leapt off with a spring. Brushing off the snow clinging to my body, I turned to look at the fallen ceiling. Though a few snowflakes drift down languidly, the hole is quite long, so the quantity falling through is less than expected. My eyes first caught sight of a pile of materials for magic engineering. These were the ones I'd transferred back and forth several times, which was utterly draining. Also impressive was the clean appearance of the library, organized immaculately. Despite checking several times while moving materials, there were no gaps to be found. I'll need to repay Zix a few coins for asking him to clean up the debris with magic, but I didn't expect him to tidy up all the scattered books as well. Even when I see books neatly categorized by meaningful groups, it definitely feels like the work of someone who's previously experienced as a librarian. It seems Elka's handiwork is in there, too. Despite asking him to keep the existence of the library a secret, it seems like he couldn't hold it back and told Elka. I clicked my tongue a few times before stopping. That guy's not one for cheap talk, but the only person he doesn't keep secrets from and shares everything with is Elka. Even if he is tight-lipped, it seems he insists on not hiding from Elka. Perhaps Elka was so troubled by this fact that she even came down to this dark library to organize the books. The thought occurs that the price paid for uncovering someone's secret is too hefty. I can easily imagine Elka classifying books systematically, and Zix running around putting them on shelves. Knowing Zix's character, he must have treated this as a form of training too. Regardless, I owe them a big favor. When I go back to school after opening, I should reciprocate accordingly. It's about time to start. Food is stockpiled in abundance. All materials are gathered. The library is tidied up. For 1 week, the conditions for concentrated research in magic engineering have been perfectly prepared. A week is long, but it's an awfully short time to commit to training something. If it was possible to master everything in a week, there would be no need for such specialization in the field of magic engineering. However, if we're talking about efficient growth, I've already got that down pat. Most important is repetition for mastery. No matter how bland and simple the contraption, repeatedly making it lets me start to see its mechanical principles and the flow of mana that wasn't apparent initially. It's inefficient to try to decipher hundreds of formulas at once. What's important is to select and focus. Deeply penetrating the knowledge of magic engineering in the field that I can create is key. After madly repeating the skills of creating artifacts like the wind dispenser, noise generator, greenhouse crystal beads, blue magic artifacts, and light spheres, and once I become somewhat proficient, I'll start making rare grade items such as Anya's fearful fire. Once I stack up proficiency and push myself to the brink where my eyes are bloodshot and I can't stay awake from sheer exhaustion, then I'll challenge the final goal for this vacation. Gluckzai Legendary. Temporary surge of proficiency in all responsive abilities. Halves the efficiency of curse-type magic. Prevents the use of defensive magic. Grants a state of immunity to elemental magic. Dulheim Hourglass Legendary. Reverts physical condition back seconds before and erases all damages and wounds. Single use. Gluckzai, which sacrifices adaptability and defense for an extreme surge of sensitivity. Dulheim Hourglass, able to nullify even death-dealing damage in a single instance. These are legendary grade magic engineering artifacts that shouldn't exist at the third act for balance reasons. One of them must be completed. I'll tackle it with the mindset that it's do or die. If I think back to my high school days when I studied for 3 hours a day, this level of fever pitch is something I can endure with sheer willpower. Sitting at the workbench set up in the center of the library, I took a deep breath. Phew, let's go. And then I realized, no, I didn't bring the tools from the cabin. I had stored them nicely in the toolbox to bring to the library. I was too busy preparing for the storm that I couldn't pay attention to it. It was a grievous oversight. It's time for my body to go through hardship. I sighed deeply. The biting cold wind was blowing more fiercely, weaving through the conifers in the northern forest. Clarice's hair fluttered as if it might fly away at any moment. Despite the wind which was still bearable, she continued towards the river that ran through the North Forest. Spiritual magic, and sacred magic. If spiritual magic is said to originate from the natural blessings of the gods, sacred magic arises from piety and faith, manifesting as divine magic. Hence, most cathedral knights and mages affiliated with the sacred orders are more proficient in sacred magic than spiritual magic, because the latter typically shows meaningful efficiency only to those born with divine blessings. Clarice, who exclusively enjoys the love of the god Telos, has a spiritual magic that exhibits absurd physical force. The Shield of Faith, which Clarice wears, is an irrational defensive magic that doubles the damage inflicted by any attacker bearing malice, and from the outside, it's impossible to know what just hit them. Unless there are very specific countermeasures, she's an entity that can hardly be opposed. Therefore, no matter what wild animal or villain she encounters, Clarice will never get hurt. Even if she feels fear due to a powerful aura, the likelihood of being harmed by an attack is virtually non-existent. However, despite this, Clarice felt a distinct fear when facing Ed. There was a reason for that. That is because Ed likely received the baptism of the Telos Church. Since the head of the Rothtailor family received baptism, it has become a tradition for heirs of the Rothtailor lineage to follow suit. Although it's only a tradition that spans 2 to 3 generations. With Arwen Rothtailor having passed away and Ed Rothtailor taking his place as heir, he, too, must have been baptized by an archbishop or someone of significant standing. Tanya has not yet received baptism, having only taken the heir's place for a few months. However, Ed Rothtaylor, no matter what people say, is likely a baptized member of the Telos Church. The shield of faith, against a member of the church who has received baptism, its power does not manifest. Those who share the same teachings do not draw swords against each other. After all, a follower who is important enough to receive baptism wouldn't harbor malice against a saint. But here lies the loophole. Right now, she is not Clarice the saint but Kylie Ekner attending school. Even if the opponent is a devout follower of Telos, if they are unaware of her identity, they might draw their sword. And I don't want to reveal myself. No, she doesn't even know whether that blonde noble in decline is aware of Clarice's identity. Everything is a question mark. GHH. Clutching her tightly bound clothing, Clarice continued to push through the snowstorm in the North Forest. She knew the location of the river, having studied the map in advance. Since it cuts through the forest, it will inevitably come into view if she keeps going. When the river comes into sight, she just needs to walk upstream. The cold was manageable. Maid had rushed out as soon as she knew of Clarice's presence, so she wouldn't be discovered for at least a few hours. She must resolve everything about Ed Rothtaylor that didn't sit right with her before spring arrives and the new semester begins. It really feels like an adventure. Before she knew it, the fear and tension had largely subsided, and a burning ambition was rising within Clarice. Just finding Ed's cabin seemed to inspire groundless hope that everything would work out. Clarice may seem timid but is far from weak. Innate spiritual magic and the sacred magic she acquired later aren't inferior to ordinary magicians. And when Ed's cabin faintly appeared through the snowstorm, like an explorer discovering a key landmark, Clarice took a deep breath. This was her first time venturing out on her own so far, and her first time walking through a snowstorm. Is this what Adele spoke of, the colorful life of an adventurer? Making her way to the front of Ed's snow-buried camp, Clarice took a deep breath. Confidence was welling up. She felt like she could do anything. Clarice decided no longer to be scared and, taking a great gulp of air, she opened the door to Ed's cabin. The howling of the wind right next to my ear was replaced by a droning sound as it hit a barrier. The sound of the wind indoors was chilling beyond expectation. With no source of light, the interior of the cabin was naturally cloaked in darkness, requiring one to wait for their eyes to adjust to the murkiness. Then, the first thing to become visible in the darkness was the carcass of a wild boar hanging from a hook. It was larger than Clarice. Backpedaling in shock, Clarice stumbled and landed on her bottom. She covered her mouth with both hands, turning her eyes away from the boar's body dangling in front of her. Gradually, the rest of the cabin came into view. Most of the supplies had been gathered inside in preparation for the storm. Scattered here and there were saw blades, which, on closer inspection, turned out to be a heap of hunting traps. To Clarice, who lacked any knowledge of hunting, they appeared to be some kind of sharp weapons. Moreover, most of the traps were smeared with a forbidding crimson blood. Blood everywhere she looked. Blood, blood, blood. The stains from the boar being moved were still visible, and in one corner, there was a pile of snake skins and marten hides. Deeper into the cabin were butchering knives covered in bloodstains, handsaws that were thicker and larger than Clarice's own pale arms, and the guts of various wild animals, drying and strewn about. On the table, the head of the boar hung as if it was put on display, the purpose of which was beyond understanding. By this point, tears had already welled up in Clarice's eyes. The sight was too graphic for a girl who had grown up in the pure dew of Sungwangdo. It was like seeing hell itself. Crunch, crunch. The sound of footsteps on the snow. Someone was approaching the cabin from beyond the raging storm. No need to see more. At this time, at this place, there could be none other than the cabin's owner. Clarice, in search of a place to hide, found her legs giving out, and she collapsed back to the floor. She managed, however, to push herself toward a corner of the cabin, though her attempt at concealment was clearly inadequate. She crawled under a work table, hiding in the weak darkness, and prayed to Telos. Bang! Whoosh! The door burst open, and the sound of the wind outside struck her ears anew. Ed, entering against the billowing snow, dropped something he'd been carrying on his shoulder onto the floor with a thud. It fell with a flop. Upon closer inspection, it was the frozen body of a young deer. For Ed, it had been a stroke of luck. He had not expected such a windfall on his journey. But Clarice, locking eyes with the dead deer as it rolled across the floor, couldn't even muster a faint scream. It wasn't that she kept quiet for fear of being discovered, but rather that she had no leisure to make a sound. The pointless gasps she swallowed were the only measure of her despair. Hook. The cold weather. The breath of Ed, adorned in layers of clothes, created a mist around his mouth. To Clarice, these exhalations seemed like the breath of a beast. Even though there was no glow in Ed's eyes, the way she imagined it almost made her faint. Yet the last shred of her rationality clamped her hands over her mouth to prevent any sound from escaping. Now Ed stepped fully into the darkness. Unlike Clarice, his eyes were not yet adapted to the gloom. But, knowing the rough layout already, Ed groped his way further inside. Dodging various objects, he reached for a wooden box and began pulling out items as if checking them. Tweezers, needles, awls, spikes, the items grew larger, and as his eyes adjusted to the dark, soon objects like hammers and knives appeared. Lastly, he lifted a huge handsaw, its blade catching the moonlight and faintly illuminating Clarice's terrified eyes. Eek! She couldn't help but make a sound. Clarice, with her mouth still covered by her hands, was now nearly driven to madness. Ed's mind quickly snapped to attention, his gaze precisely meeting Clarice's in the dark. Her heart stopped, then hammered all the more for having stopped. "Is that you, Clarice Ekner?" Her body shook uncontrollably, her reasoning halted, tears flowed freely, and her heart labored uselessly. "What's going on? Why are you here? Why are you shaking?" Kaya. Boom. Saintly force, divine emission. The technique, which had absolute superiority in compatibility against virtually all magic, struck Ed directly in the solar plexus, disregarding even the protection of the storm he was cloaked in. Crash. Bang. Clang. Caught utterly off guard, Ed was hurled back against the wall. The cabinet toppled over, and every manner of clutter hanging on the wall poured down upon him. Dust billowed up, and then silence reigned. Once the dust settled, the scene revealed Ed, motionless, a stream of blood trailing down from his head. The ambush was too perfect. Even for someone as swift and decisive as Ed, it was too much to ask for him to react. It was accidental. All of a sudden, I didn't mean to. A moment of silence. Clarice, her body shaking, stood up to see Ed lying there, a thread of blood flowing from him. Ed, hit by a torrent of falling objects, appeared unconscious at first glance. No, it wasn't a matter of appearing unconscious. Whoosh. The unrelenting winter winds continued. The cold air gradually cooled her head, and at long last, her stranded senses returned. Clarice finally faced the reality. I've killed a person. Ed's body was cold and unresponsive. Clarice felt a different sort of chill creeping over her. Telos, I have sinned. With trembling hands, Clarice clasped her own and knelt down, her face a picture of confusion as she continued to tremble, not knowing what else to do. I am tainted with such a great sin. How can I purify it? My life should be as pristine as purity itself, yet now it's stained with an indelible sin. I am defiled, I should burn in hell, for my sins. Confessing in her distress, Clarice trembled and cried. In that moment of near panic. Hey, tap. A hand landed on her shoulder. Startled, she turned around to face Ed, still breathing shallowly with blood smeared on his face, emanating a devilish aura. Are you kidding me right now? Eek. Clarice could not even scream. Without a chance to react, her expression of anguish frozen on her face, she lost consciousness and fell. Ellipsis. The snowstorm raged on as if to swallow the whole world, and within the little cabin amidst the tempest, only Ed was standing, looking down at the collapsed form of Clarice. His expression was not a pleasant one. Head maid, I've received the report. Stay calm, and we need to figure out how to proceed. Clarice had miscalculated. As soon as the maids checked her condition, they became aware of her absence. She might have assumed that they wouldn't notice if she was gone for a few hours, but the maids of Ophelius Hall are not so negligent. It took them a mere 15 minutes to catch on to Clarice's absence. The duty maids, keeping watch from the top floor of Ophelius Hall, spotted a figure vanishing into the blizzard. It took them just an additional 10 minutes to re-evaluate the personnel status of the entire building. And only 5 minutes to confirm that the one who had disappeared was indeed the girl named Clarice. Why she has vanished, we may not know. We must report to the academy and commence a search immediately. Shall we send out the duty maids first, head maid? Dispatching the maids requires careful consideration, as it could reduce our ability to manage the estate internally. Right now, we need to mobilize our resources as efficiently as possible. Especially, do not subtract any personnel monitoring Miss Lucy. Rashly chasing after her could lead to greater harm. Yes, but what about Miss Clarice? Despite the unexpected circumstances, Belle remained unflustered, contemplating their next step. The maid chief of Ophelius Hall. One of the Academy's insiders who knew Clarice's true identity. That is, Belle had been informed ahead of time that Clarice was in fact Clarice. At least the person in charge of the dormitory had to know. There's no way to tell why she's braved this snowstorm, where she's headed. If we could just determine her motive, we might be able to guess her destination. By principle, they cannot allow the security of the mansion to be compromised for one person. Sending out maids to search for Clarice doesn't guarantee they'll find her. The weather even decreases the likelihood of finding her. They need to work with the academy, slowly and carefully, to conduct the search. However, contemplating an unseen truth, Clarice's real identity, one realizes that everyone must be mobilized to find her. If the saint goes missing, that becomes a cataclysm warranting national upheaval. On the other hand, the saint, shrouded in holy grace, is safer than other students. It's almost certain that she won't perish to wild animals or immediate lethal danger. Ultimately, Belle decides to take action herself. By delegating command to a senior maid briefly, she might find the time to handle this crisis. Even in the face of this emergency, the composure Belle maintains becomes a calming influence on the surrounding maids. True to the reputation of the head maid of Ophelius Hall, the duty maids have updated their reports. Head maid. The figure presumed to be Miss Clarice, disappeared into the northern woods. Then came the news. In this weather, there shouldn't be anyone outside. But there is one man, defiantly facing the harsh blizzard of nature. The northern woods are now his domain. Could it be? No, it mustn't be. A man with too much good fortune with women, much more than seems natural, lives in the northern forest, and Belle feels the cold sweat beginning to build. Between the downpour and the blizzard. Lost. A man and a woman left alone. A call for help. Waiting for rescue in extreme circumstances, depending on each other for survival. Belle raises her voice in urgency. We must find her. Quickly. Before it's too late. Though Belle knows that Clarice wouldn't die from being murdered, her voice nonetheless remains urgent. Instantly, the maids realize the gravity of the situation. It could very well be. Chapter 87. As the building had been recently renovated, the Ophelius Hall stood stoutly, unshaken even by a blizzard. Its management team comprised of veterans, and most of the residing students possessed exceptional talents, which resulted in a more peaceful atmosphere compared to Dex Hall or Lortel Hall. The heating was perfectly arranged, and the maids provided for nearly all necessities, so the interior of Ophelius Hall felt more like it was settling into a long rest than preparing for a natural disaster. Although crossing the dimly lit hallways might give off an eerie feeling in the winter's soft darkness, the gentle lights from various halls and student facilities inside Ophelius Hall gave off a warm sense of comfort instead. The student halls located midway through each floor seemed to serve as leisure spaces for the residents of Ophelius Hall, albeit somewhat more spacious than their intended purpose. With antique wooden pillars lined up along the walls and neatly placed tables throughout the hall, assortments of desserts and drinks kept stocked by maids could be found between the pillars, and around the large fireplace located in the center were big round wooden tables arranged in abundance. Most students spent their time in their rooms, but too much confinement could lead to boredom. Therefore, these facilities inside Ophelius Hall saw a decent amount of use. Some students chatted while enjoying desserts, others participated in light reading groups, and there were also those who practiced chess or engaged in elemental magic to improve their skills. Do you really wish for a duel? Zix had not long since returned from visiting his family home with Elka. They had hurried back before the blizzard, feeling rather exhausted from the rushed journey and now firmly intent on recovery. Leaning casually against a table in the student hall, engrossed in alchemical texts, Zix showed a curious smile at the bold suggestion from a junior who had come to greet him. Yes, Senior Zix. Folding the corner of the book he was reading, Zix placed it on the table. The junior who had come to find him was Wade Callamore, holding the position of top freshman. With hair as white as new snow and pale gray eyes, the boy bore an almost albino appearance as he greeted Zix earnestly. And hastily, he proposed a duel. Of course, not right now. You're famous across the academy, even beyond the magic department, Senior Zix. I am not yet a match to challenge you in a duel. I'm not really concerned about such formalities. If you want a duel, crossing blades with you is not too troublesome. Zix casually leaned on his chin and replied nonchalantly. But why? Of course, as a junior, I wish to seek guidance from a senior like you. Skip the superficial reasons. As Zix said this, Wade nodded with a grin. I want to prove my worth. I feel I haven't properly demonstrated my strength within the academy yet, so I'm approaching reputed seniors for duels. Securing the position of top freshman and still saying such things. I genuinely wish to duel with Zix Sr., but considering you just returned from your journey and everyone needs to follow a certain order, it wouldn't be right to challenge you straight away. Wade smiled refreshingly, but Zix sensed that Wade's intentions were not as pure as his appearance seemed to suggest. Whether it was Tanya declaring her intention to capture the student council president seat or Wade ambitiously challenging seniors to duels, Zix felt a certain pride watching these energetic juniors. I will first defeat seniors like Clevius from Combat Department and Elvira from Alchemy Department before I issue a challenge to you. The Magic Department's top isn't me, though. The top sophomore of the Magic Department is usually excluded from such considerations by all students. Wade pulled up a chair and sat down, asking a maid to bring him a cup of tea. Indeed, Lucy Mayrill had become the standard exception to the usual ranking considerations, whether for academic grades or dual outcomes. Considering that, I view you as the actual top sophomore of the Magic Department. Well, I'm not interested in such hollow victories. Lucy is stronger than me, and I see no reason to exclude that truth. Everyone is aware of your humility, but facts are facts. If I defeat Zix Sr., I can prove that I am on a higher level than the other second-year students. Wade seemed aware of what he was saying. Making such declarations to someone's face could be seen as provocation, depending on the circumstances. But Zix wasn't one to take offense at such things. Wade probably knew that too. Winning against you, Senior Zix, might be hard to guarantee. That sounds like the other seniors will be an easy win for you. Wade simply smiled in response. And what will you do once you defeat me? Then I'll extend my challenge to the third-year seniors, like top student Yenica and Combat Department head Drake. Personally, I'm also eager to contest against Senior Ed, whose reputation is well known among us first years. It's great to be ambitious, but make sure your confidence doesn't turn into arrogance. Zix wasn't being rude, he was merely stating the plain truth. Wade smoothly handled the advice with a word of thanks, though he didn't seem to take it too seriously. I've arranged to duel with Senior Clevius. With the blizzard locking everyone in the dormitories, he seemed to have time to spare. We can use the underground hall of Ophelius for the duel. A week indoors was considerably lengthy, so Ophelius Hall had prepared various activities to pass the time, including student duels. However, Clevius Sr. seems to be avoiding a duel with me. It's quite disappointing. Wade laughed contentedly. It was clear, Clevius, always gloomy and timid, would certainly not accept a duel challenge from an overzealous freshman like Wade. Wade's enthusiasm made it apparent he'd try anything to secure a victory over Clevius. My purpose in greeting you today was to give a prior notice for when I eventually request a duel. Your thoughtfulness is appreciated, but unnecessary. Zix smiled again, picked up his alchemical text and briefly flipped through it. Even if you defeat me, progressing to duel with third-year seniors or Ed, it doesn't seem likely to me. I understand. I'm not foolish enough to believe defeating Senior Zix will be easy. That's not what I meant. Although you appear to be quite capable based on rumors, confidence, and achievements, you still need to improve engaging your opponents. Flipping through the pages, Zix spoke indifferently. You don't understand, you'll end at Clevius. Quote. If I were you, I wouldn't even contemplate reaching me, let alone Yenica or Ed. Though Clevius always seemed disheartened, cowardly, and pitiful, it was a mystery he held the position of the combat department's chief. There were rumors doubting his capability. Wade, about to express his displeasure to Zix's conclusive statement, hesitated as Zix affirmed confidently. If you wish to defeat me, better develop a sense of reality. In the northern forest, it was rumored that an outlaw lived. Among the students unaware of Ed's wilderness lifestyle, the rumor had taken root. Those who knew about Ed's way of life numbered less than a dozen, so it made sense for such strange rumors to circulate. The tales portrayed a man clad in the skins of bloodied wild animals, grinning unpleasantly, an intimidating collection of eyewitness reports. But for Belle, who knew the truth, it all seemed peculiarly odd. The blizzard blasted through the forest, but the dense conifers shielded enough to provide visibility, though the gusts of wind proved too mighty for Belle's slender frame. Still, ample preparations against the cold had been made, layers of thin clothing, a dress of a chief maid, and a thick cape to top it off. Using a low-tier fire spell for warmth, the conditions seemed more bearable than anticipated. The destination was clear, Ed's cabin. If Saintess Clarice had ventured into the northern woods, Ed was likely the only one who would have encountered her. Footprints. Fresh tracks marked the snowy path in the direction of Ed's cabin. Although other students might assume Ed to be uncommunicative and cold-hearted, Belle knew otherwise, a reasonably sensible man, capable of conversation, and in his own way, considerate. It was far preferable for Belle to cross paths with Ed than with some unknown individual. Despite being pursued by formidable women like Yenica, Lortel, and Lucy, Ed remained staunchly dedicated to his principles. He could be trusted. It was highly improbable that he'd harm Clarice or harbor any nefarious thoughts against her. Should he come across Clarice, surely he would intend to send her back to Ophelius Hall rather than entertain any malicious intent. The only concern was that Ed's personal relationships seemed unnecessarily complicated, a situation that already caused enough headaches for Belle. Finally, Ed's cabin came into view. The blizzard made the distance seem longer than expected. Ed must be unaware of Kylie's true identity. Kylie was none other than the Saintess, Clarice, under the protection of the Holy City. Even without knowing her true identity, Ed would have treated Clarice with kindness. With such certitude, Belle opened the door to the cabin. Whoosh. Quote. Inside, she witnessed the figures of Ed and Clarice. Oh, it's you, Belle. I had a feeling you'd come. Ed appeared frustrated and was bandaging his injuries. In the cabin's corner, shivering Clarice was kneeling on the floor, holding onto a wooden chair as if being punished, presenting a pitiful sight. Belle was already beginning to feel a headache. Both women were shivering, but for different reasons. One was trembling due to the numbness in her arms from holding the chair, while the other was terrified by the fact that a saintess, protected by the grace of the saints, was being punished. Unable to disclose Kylie's identity to Ed, Belle felt stuck and awkwardly accepted the tea Ed had offered. Master Ed. After tidying up the chaotic cabin, Ed looked at Belle, waiting for him to speak. Thank you for explaining the situation, but it seems we should take Miss Kylie back soon before the blizzard intensifies. Upon hearing this, Ed paused to consider before nodding. Indeed, it's not ideal for the head maid to be away from Ophelius Hall for such a long time. That's true, but, sweating profusely, Belle glanced at Clarice, thinking he must somehow take her away first. Ed pulled a wooden chair over and sat down in front of Clarice, who was standing as punishment. The sight of her trying to hold the chair steady, tears welling up and trembling, was pitiable. Ed fell into thought for a moment. He must have been startled when Clarice appeared out of nowhere in the cabin. However, after regaining his composure, it wasn't hard for him to deduce why the young saintess had come to this remote place. The minor mishap during the class assignment test was likely the cause. Despite dropping her brooch during a battle with Merelda and covering up the mistake swiftly, Clarice must have thought Ed had seen through her disguise. Admittedly, Ed's response wasn't smooth due to the suddenness of the situation, but there wasn't a better way to handle it at the moment. Kylie's true identity was a major plot twist revealed only in the latter half of Act 3. If Kylie's identity were exposed too early, and she ended up under the strict surveillance of the church's knights, the future developments would become unpredictable. After tidying up the cabin and his thoughts, Ed concluded that as long as Kylie believed he knew her true identity, she would remain uneasy. There was no immediate way to dispel her suspicions. Thus, Ed chose a direct approach. "I apologize for my disrespectful behavior, Saintess. You may put down the chair now." Both Belle and Clarice shuddered at his words. Clarice's eyes widened in shock, and Belle, uncharacteristically nervous, asked for confirmation. "You knew." As a baptized member of the Telos Church, it's usually easy to recognize when an illusion spell dissolves up close. Really? This was a gray area. Kylie's illusion hadn't completely dissipated during the test, and even if it had, making such a smooth recovery would have been difficult. Assuming ambiguity, a quick wit and reflexes could cover it, preventing any further questioning about Ed's awareness of Kylie's true identity. Then, "I've said you may put down the chair." "Ah, yes." With the plan of action decided, Ed didn't want to get further entangled with Saintess Clarice. Acknowledging that he was aware of her identity would hopefully remove her unease. Next, he needed to ensure Clarice that he wouldn't disclose her identity. As a follower of the Telos Church, it was regrettable to act so rudely towards a revered saintess. However, I felt obligated to teach you the dangers of freedom. The dim cabin, the howling wind, and the occasional creaking of the roof painted a stark contrast to the saintess's usual surroundings. The tools of the hunt and the remnants of game, along with the heavy scent of blood, added to the severity of the environment. Ed hoped to convey that life in the wilderness wasn't always romantic and filled with the scent of flowers. Often, it's more like the suffocating smell of blood in the cabin. "Do you understand the life I lead?" The disparity between a senior student's simple description of being strong and scary and the reality of living with blood and survival was profound. To the members of the Telos Church, Clarice was always an object of veneration, making the idea of punishing or angering her inconceivable. Yet, here was a boy looking at the saintess with cold eyes, prioritizing survival over religious veneration. This man's life is more about surviving than living. The slight difference in phrasing might seem insignificant, but its reality is profound. Everything possesses both light and darkness, and freedom is no different. If Adele is a bard who sings praises of freedom's beauty, then this man must represent the weight and darkness of freedom more than anyone else. Please go back, and avoid approaching this cabin again. Even under the protection of holy laws, accidents like slips, getting lost, or dying from exposure cannot be prevented. Ed said this and bowed his head graciously. "I apologize for being harsh. Sadly, it seems there's no one around you to share these truths, so I took it upon myself to overstep." Rising from his seat, he concluded, "Now, please leave." Clarice had no chance to respond. She could not find the words as Ed turned to leave. Before the blizzard intensified, they needed to return to Ophelius Hall. With Belle's guidance, it would be a quick journey back. There, they could enjoy warm soup in a cozy room, a stark contrast to the storm outside. Sitting in a well-kept room, the blizzard would become a distant tale. Holding Belle's hand and leaving the camp, Clarice looked back with difficulty. Ed, confirming their departure, returned to the cabin, his figure blending with the bleak surroundings. Inside, the cabin would remain cold, filled with the heavy scent of blood, a reality that weighed heavily on her. Yet, this boy seemed unburdened by its gravity, treating the harshness of survival as a mere aspect of life. Clarice had read that even beautiful swans paddle ugly beneath the water. The life of freedom was no different. She could never have imagined the complexities behind Ed's facade, based on her initial impression of him defending the summit's altar. "Mr. Bell." "Yes, Lady Clarice. I'm sorry for causing you such trouble. It's merely my duty. Please don't worry about it." As they made their way through the blizzard, Clarice glanced back towards the cabin repeatedly. For the first time since arriving in Sylvania, she felt she had met a senior worth respecting. Such an encounter would have been impossible in the Holy City. Belle, unaware of her thoughts, sweated as he saw Clarice looking back at the cabin. Could it be? No, it couldn't, could it? As the blizzard raged and winter slowly receded, everyone experienced their own form of winter. Some buried themselves in magical engineering research, others conversed with spirits by a window, and some completed ledger books in the warmth of their rooms. Each person found their way to endure the season, from diligent students and failed knights to guardians of the northern plains and timid swordsmen hiding in their rooms. In the royal residence, a platinum-haired princess sat quietly by the window. Watching the snowfall, Princess Phenia of Phenia lowered her gaze and made a small resolve. With spring and a new semester approaching, it was a time of change, including the upcoming Student Council President election. Widely regarded as a strong candidate due to her broad support across the academy, Phenia Elias Clarel decided, "I choose not to run." For Ed Rothtaylor, this statement was akin to the crumbling of all premises and the onset of all calamities. Chapter 88. The Student Council President Election War 1. The greatest slayer of warriors in this world is none other than arrogance. Beware of those who, confident in their abilities, charge bravely and valorously, believing such acts to be virtues. Do not hold in high regard those who constantly risk their lives to assert their existence to the world. Fear, Clevius. Fear is your weapon. If the moment to flee ever comes, run away so fast that you almost lose your tail. Do not risk your life for pride. Do not become obsessed with honor either. You do not need to forcefully confront every crisis and challenge that comes your way. You do not need to hurt yourself by attempting the impossible. Live like that, and there will come a time when your feet won't move, even if you could normally run away as fast as you've always done. There will certainly be a time when your feet are stuck to the ground and refuse to move. In front of trials that the whole world declares impossible, you feel the need to stand firm, gripped by your legs. Although your whole body trembles as if it might go mad, strangely, your hand gripping the sword is filled with steadfast strength. As though ensnared by inertia, your body yearns to move forward even in the face of certain defeat. What drives you in such moments is not pride or honor, but a conviction of an entirely different kind. If it's not that, then run away. Beg for your life in a disgraceful manner and survive by cowardice. Survive ignobly, even if you have to roll in the mud, and wait for your time. Never sacrifice your safety for high honor and glory. Do not live the life of a hero. Do not walk the thorny path that nobody forced upon you. The flower that blooms atop a cliff may appear noble, but ultimately, it is the tough weeds that fill the garden. I hope you never forget this truth. Dual application. Quote. After the snowstorm had ceased, the Ophelius Hall became bustling with students preparing for the next semester. The dual application presented by first-year top student Wade Callamore against Clevius arrived during the peak of the snowstorm. Clevius rose from the bed in his private room and sat at the table where the maids had prepared refreshments. In a room where the curtains always cast a shadow, he grabbed a handful of snacks, biting and chewing loudly. Then he shook, a curse slipping out as he hunched over and looked at the floor. Why the F***K, does it have to be me? A bead of sweat trickled down beneath his dark circles heavy with gloom. Clevius did not even respond to the genius swordsman Wade of the Callamore family's challenge. However, he couldn't withstand public opinion demanding an answer and eventually expressed his intention to forfeit. He neither wanted to get hurt in a pointless fight nor be humiliated in front of everyone. People said it was typical of Clevius, and he wasn't even dissatisfied with their assessment. Maybe this was better. It was preferable to fade into obscurity after being branded a coward than to be beaten miserably in public. Clevius hesitantly lifted the curtain of the window. A comforting light briefly entered the dark corner of the room but stopped short. The view outside showed that winter was fully over, and spring had brought life bursting forth everywhere. It was the scenery that gloomy Clevius hated the most. That bastard Wade, with his personality, will probably keep throwing dual applications everywhere. Clevius had heard rumors about Wade too. They were about how full of himself he was, craving recognition. He boasted of defeating all the seniors, and the rumors even spread among the first-year students. Being the first target was both misfortune and a stroke of luck. Once the next target was decided, the First target would quietly be forgotten. A dog's life. As spring blooms with beautiful flowers and Sylvania Academy revives with its unique romance, Clevius, enshrined in darkness in the corner of his room, turned his back on that radiant romance. He was surely a man belonging to the darkness. As if to say, what of it, the fluttering petals outside the window seemed to declare. It was a new semester. Spring comes when you start to forget about it, which is what makes it so special. Looking at the world awakening from a blanket of white snow and the warm sunlight nurturing the blossoming flowers, I realize that it's been a year since I started this life. Last year at this time, I was kicked out of Ophelius Hall and haphazardly set up my life in the forest, but now I have a decently established camp and cabin filled with useful furniture. Once a body that drenched in sweat like a river by attending just one class, has now become well trained enough that jogging to and from class feels easy. Oh my, a familiar face. While I was taking advantage of lunchtime to buy supplies for the lab from the residential building to take back later, I noticed a familiar girl sitting at Laplace Bakery's terrace near the bridge that led from the living quarters to the professor's building. Her infamy had grown enough that no one was unaware that beneath her ever-smiling, outwardly kind facade, she probably harbored hundreds of sly plans. It's just after the opening ceremony, and you're already working on lab tasks, Senior Ed. I waved my hand casually in response to her greeting. If you want to check on the girl's state, just look at her hair. If her reddish-brown locks, once loose, are now neatly tied on one side, it means she's relaxed. In important meetings or formal situations, she's the opposite, letting her hair down and adorning herself with various accessories. As expected, she's a figure with a substantial role in her company, so she's not someone one can easily approach. Lortel, she smiles widely and gestures to me, inviting me to sit and have a cup of tea as if that was all she had in mind. You drink tea alone here, Lortel. That's surprising. Well, I was just taking a break on my business trip. I've finished important discussions, and once the staff wraps up the inventory check, I was about to leave. Inventory check. Could we get another cup of tea here, please? While smiling, Lortel quietly communicated with an attendant close by, who then darted off swiftly. The one who had rushed off was an ordinary employee, but the one who came back carrying tea was the owner of Laplace Bakery himself. A man who once worked in the Royal Palace kitchens and owned several well-known eateries in the capital, sweating profusely, places another cup of tea before us. After bowing politely and asking if we needed anything else, he returned to the kitchen. It seemed some sort of finalization was taking place in the kitchen, according to Lortel's words. I've never seen that man wearing such an expression before. Well, he must be nervous about something. After all, you can dust anyone and find some dirt. But what right does your company have to go through a bakery's storeroom? Is it okay for just any business partner to do that? We are merely business partners, but since the bakery orders all its essential ingredients from Elk Trading, they're rather attentive to us. There aren't many places on Akan Island that can handle the volume Laplace Bakery needs apart from Elk Trading. Volume aside, Laplace Bakery uses a lot of high-quality ingredients, especially those where freshness is crucial. Unless the trading house has a lengthy history in distribution and has proven reliability, it would be hard to trust and commit. In a city with a sizable market, different trading houses might have competed for orders, but on the limited scope of Akan Island, story changes. If Elk Trading refused to supply them, Laplace Bakery could find their business becoming difficult literally overnight. Lortel wore the most benign smile in the world. Exclusive power can be quite fun at such times, don't you think? It creates authorities that otherwise wouldn't exist. It seems you're the only one having fun, judging by the expressions of everyone else. Don't be so sour. Although you're absolutely correct. Lortel chuckled and then swept her fingers across her teacup. There is some legitimacy to our position after all. It seems like they've been caught making fake orders. Fake orders. Yes. Placing bulk orders for goods they don't need, then canceling them as delivery dates approach. In the end, they'll always get caught, but there's always a vendor that tries to pull this. I set down my bags and took a seat opposite her, lifting the teacup prepared by the owner himself. It smells more fragrant and intense than usual, as if it was made with special care. It's an obvious story, but during the snowstorm, there were some difficulties in getting supplies to Akan Island. The roads froze, and carriages were unable to travel. Unavoidable, due to a natural disaster. Yes, that's right. Thus, most of the vendors in the residential area were waiting their turn for supplies. We were trying to supply materials quickly to areas with higher demand and more urgent needs. It was all too predictable from there. Laplace Bakery, eager to get supplies quickly, artificially inflated their order with unneeded items. As delivery neared, they kept only what was essential and cancelled most of the rest. They might have thought that the scale of ELT Trading's inventory would allow such a move to slide by, but it was a rather naive assumption. There's a high demand for ingredients right now, and the cancelled goods could just be sold elsewhere, so there's no financial loss for ELT Trading. However, with most vendors waiting in line and one resorting to tricks to get supplies, the offense is significant. Traders might sell their souls for a penny of profit if it balances the books, but that doesn't mean they lack all professional ethics. Besides, to us, all clients are the same. Having established herself among ELT Trading's decision-makers, Lortel has practically become the unseen queen of the living quarters underworld. Of course, Lortel does not govern or rule over anyone directly. It's not her status, nor does she have such authority. However, where people gather, chaos follows, and therefore, control is necessary. Lortel's means of control is money itself. If you delve into the hidden undercurrents of the seemingly peaceful residential area, you'll see that all money eventually flows into Lortel's wallet. Bang! Shortly after, a door banged open, and a man burst out. It was the chef who had brought us tea earlier. He had probably completed a significant part of the inventory check. Comparing actual use and order quantities isn't particularly hard. Lortel, please hear me out. The person in charge is being too demanding. I have nothing to say regarding the orders, but if you limit our future orders this much. He knew. Without approval from Lortel, the employee wouldn't have imposed restrictions on orders single-handedly. All this had happened within Lortel's sanctions. Yet in desperation, clinging to straws, he came out to appeal to Lortel. With a pathetic posture, he pleaded with Lortel, explaining his personal situation, justifying the order quantities, giving insight into the operational status of the store. Lortel simply sat through his plea, eyes half closed, a teacup against her lips. Please, just once, consider our store's circumstances. If it comes to this, That's right. Interrupting her tea drinking, Lortel spoke up, making the man gulp down his breath, anticipating her continuation. And then, she turned to me, not the man. I have classes in the afternoon. Should we head to the professor's building together? From the start, Lortel hadn't bothered to seriously listen to the man. Rising from her seat, she cast a fleeting glance in the man's direction, though her gaze was utterly cold. The student council president elections are close. You don't plan to run yourself. Although I'm tempted by the power of the student council, if I had to devote my time to it over my business with the trading house, priorities would shift in the wrong direction. The crowd was buzzing as we crossed the student plaza in the professor's building, a clear indication it was a new semester. During holiday periods, the plaza was almost deserted, every shout echoing through the space. Now, it was so crowded it was hard to see the plaza's layout. The ideal situation for me is having someone favorable to me become president. Are you not interested, Senior Ed? I could support you. I have no such intention. There's no guarantee I'd win anyway. What a shame. I thought you'd say that. Lortel walked draped in a semi-robe over her uniform blouse, her arms embracing a couple of books. Lortel herself seemed overwhelmed with tasks between the trading house and her studies. She was still a student, after all, and committed to honing her magic to the best of her ability. Chances are she, too, breaks down her day into minutes to manage everything. Your sister mentioned running for the election. Was her name Tanya? Maybe I'll support her. Tanya. Lortel glanced around briefly and lowered her voice as she spoke to me. GOC spoke. I wouldn't want to support Princess Phinia even if someone beat me to death. Well, it seems like most of the scholars are in support of her. She'd become the most promising candidate as soon as she decides to run. I won't go into minute details, but I understand, Senior. Lortel said softly. I'm not sure if Tanya knows this, but once Princess Fenia declares her candidacy, it's almost hopeless for Tanya. Even if by some unfathomable miracle the majority of grade chiefs support Tanya, it will still be considerably insufficient. No matter that she's the second daughter of the Rothtailor family, the difference in their standings is just too great. At his words, I nodded. In official competitions as well, Tanya loses by a truly unbelievable margin. Using all her resources, she desperately tried to gain even one more vote in a disgraceful struggle, but the overwhelming margin never decreased. Tanya Rothtailor, the younger lady doomed. In face of the despairingly overwhelming vote difference, she had to suppress her frustration and exit shaking with anger. She was nothing more than a stepping stone villain from Rothtailor. By the way, Senior Ed, do you support Princess Fenia? Me? I don't know. It's not really about who I support, but if I had to say, I would cheer for my kin Tanya a bit more. I'm relieved to hear that. I was a bit anxious thinking even you might support Princess Fenia. Most scholars look up to her, but, well, if it's not Senior, then that's fine. I've been involved with Princess Fenia for a while. There were various incidents, but I couldn't say I left a good impression. She probably hates me quite a bit. Is that so? I'm not sure, but, if I were in her shoes, I think it would be hard to feel particularly good about me. Yeah, she might harbor a great grudge against me, or at the very least some resentment. If you say so, I do feel relieved. Relieved. Quote ellipsis quote. Lortel wrapped her hands around her book and hung her head low. You know I see you as a man, Senior Ed. Quote ellipsis quote. Jealousy is more common than thought, you know. Despite appearances, I am female. She then wrapped one arm around my own and after casting her gaze downward, slyly lifted her eyes. Her eyes narrowed fox-like as she blinked coquettishly and looked up at me with a cunning smile. Did it strike home? Quote ellipsis quote. Shall I check your heartbeat? In the middle of the square, I pressed down on Lortel, who was about to burrow her ear at my chest, sending her away with a small grunt. She grinned and shook her head. Just building walls around yourself, do I look like I've done something wrong? There's nothing you've done wrong to me but, until I graduate, it's a bit tough for me. Until you graduate. The girl, who has adjusted to catch even the slight nuance of 1,000 negotiation tables, sees every hint of tone and choice of words as clues and information. What about after graduating? Quote ellipsis quote. Oh, that seems like snagging some major information. With arms crossed and a crafty smile, Lortel looked up with her chin resting on her shoulder. Some sort of temporal restriction. I wonder if it's all right to hand over such tremendous information. Although I'm not sure what meaning you attribute to graduation, it seems there will be some emotional progress post-school. Quote ellipsis quote. Although, whether you can maintain your fortress until then, I can't really tell tilde. Lortel released me and swiftly stepped back, then trotted away before turning back to look up at me, her hand on her smile, foxy as ever. I'll stop here for now. Graduation feels distant as we speak, but after all, it is just the year after next. Time flies unexpectedly, you know. I have nothing to say against that. Of course, you would say that, right? Anyway, you seem to be in good health, and your studies are progressing faithfully, so that's comforting. How have the items for demonic engineering I gave you last time been? I've used them all. I trained in demonic engineering over the break. Oh, any successful outcomes? I pondered for a moment on how to respond, then nodded. Depending on results alone, it was a huge success. Through an unrealistic schedule and day-long demonic engineering training, by the day before school started, I had finally completed a prototype of the legendary grade demonic engineering equipment. Since I hadn't had the chance to use it practically, it remains a prototype. That's good to hear. Since it's been useful, it's a positive thing for me too. Unfortunately, I was too swamped with problems over the break to take care of everything. Problems are that many, like the incident at Laplace Bakery. Let's just say, that incident is part of the problems. The immediate main concern is a shortage of liquid funds. My wallet is a bit tight. Lortel is short on money. Though it seems hardly plausible, on closer inspection, the issue became clear. Assets and cash are two completely different concepts. Due to unexpected expenses, it looks like there will be a delay in assessing the situation and restoring lost funds after the loss of a chest of gold coins from the main storehouse that was being transported by carriage caught in an avalanche. That means available funds are rather tight. Regular cash inflows from the trading firm have been disrupted. Such disasters seem periodic for a firm her size. That's why even with so much assets, I'm in a situation where I have to tighten the belt. Branch office is also avoiding unnecessary expenditures. I will personally not spend where not needed, and I intend to reduce even the necessary ones. Is the cash situation that tight? Just a temporary bottleneck. It's not desperately short on money. Ordinary life's basic needs are still well secured. It's just that, I'm a bit short on extra spending power. Basic needs as per Lortel's standards would have different monetary units to begin with. These variables are mostly due to the aftermath of the snowstorms that hit near Akan Island. Although it's spring, the effects of winter remain firmly in place. I'm not exactly in a good mood. Just yesterday, I denied a request from a shaky business to repay a transaction whose due date is far from over. Their circumstances weren't that good either, it seems. Everyone's struggling, especially when it comes to managing money. Lortel fluttered her hair caught by the blowing spring wind. Don't worry, managing money is my specialty. Now that I've set my mind to it, there's no way I'll increase unnecessary expenses any further. With that, she smiled again like a fox. I remembered her icy gaze upon the men in the bakery. Regardless, Lortel has a nature that becomes cold like metal when engaged in business matters. Don't worry, Senior Ed, by the way, why are you heading to class without your books? As we dived deep into the array of teaching buildings, the classroom was not far. I have to stop by the library to borrow them. You're borrowing books for the class. If it's the student library, you have to go all the way to the outskirts near the teaching building. Just think of it as running for exercise. If I slack even a little with my physical conditioning, my body weakens quickly. It's not a distance to be running. Just buy from the academies. Lortel stopped herself in mid-sentence. Books aren't exactly cheap to pile on, particularly for a student. Sylvania's textbooks are all high-grade material. Still, it doesn't make sense to be sprinting back and forth between the library and the lecture building, although for me, it seems as routine as breathing. Suddenly, Lortel began to sweat bullets. She took out her wallet and trembled, rummaging through its content. What could be so painful, she doubted with tormented eyes and then hesitantly asked. How much, all of them, combined? I politely refused. Did you check the library organization? Senior Ed. Seeing Zix's face after the new semester started feels like it's been a while. After finishing the elemental studies class and pushing through the crowd into the square of the education building, Zix, who had been leaning against a nearby tree, approached me. Yes, they handled it well. Thank you. It was nothing. I used magic to work, so it didn't take long. But, Senior Ed, have you heard about Wade? Wade, the first-year chief. Zix nodded. The recollection slowly comes back to me. Episode 3, Act 3, the start of the Student Council presidential election. The story of Wade Calamore's challenge. As far as I knew, this challenge continued until Act 5. Wade, born with innate swordsmanship talent and overwhelming martial power claiming the position of first-year chief, was not satisfied with just that position. He challenged each department's chief to duels, defeating them all, and even went on to challenge the older students. Wade, who wanted to win them all within his limits, swept through the academy's famous figures and chiefs, and even after a close battle with Zix in tatters managed to win. Of course, Zix was quite exhausted and couldn't use his full power, and the outcome might have been different otherwise, but a loss is a loss. Wade, once making a rampage as if he were about to take down all the Academy's strong players, eventually loses to Tylee in a joint combat exercise. For a first year, his feats are commendable. Until his defeat against Tylee, the opponents he faced were by no means weak. He was indeed worthy of being called an ace student of the first year. The promising students are all sent to the dueling arena by this freshman. I heard he's also interested in you, senior. Well, thanks for telling me in advance. Take care of yourself, too. There's a welcome party for the freshman tonight. Will you come and see his face? I knew Wade's face more than familiarly. No, it's okay. I have other plans for this evening. Plans for this evening. Yenika agreed to help out with spirit magic. With the mana suppression from the ring dying down, I was slowly able to use my full magic power. After completing the medium spirit contracts, at least in the 3rd year, no one but Yenika would be superior in spirit magic. Plus, acquiring intermediate magic, filling up with basic magic proficiency, and a little more progress in mana sensibility training, I'd be among the top 10 in the 3rd year. There's a taste of accelerating the training with visible progress. If you see results, it indeed adds interest to the training itself. I wonder if this is what people who hang out in gyms all day feel like. With that, I waved goodbye to Zix and left the square. Looking back at the view of the plaza, it's a lively scene of the academy. Though I thought I wouldn't care much about such things, seeing the vibrant academy somehow raises my spirits. The fresh air specific to the new academic year lightens my steps. Over the hill, I walked across the teaching building complex. I should have mentioned it after all. Negotiating the line in interpersonal relationships is invariably difficult. Zix muttered to himself as he watched Ed walk away, leaning back against the tree. Along with the library information, maybe I should have also mentioned Princess Phinia. Since Zix and Phinia were classmates, their paths often crossed during lectures. Phinia, usually surrounded by her escort, was difficult to approach, but it was different during classes. Princess Phinia looked especially dispirited since the holidays. However, when conversations about Ed would come up among Zix or others, Phinia would bizarrely tilt her head to listen or seemed keenly attentive. At first, it felt like a misconception, but the more he watched, the more the name, Ed Rothtailor, seemed to provoke a reaction from her. I'm still not fully convinced. Zix leaned against a tree in one corner of the plaza, staring vacantly at the clear high sky. It's been a while since it was so clear. Chapter 89. Election Battle for the Student Council President 2. To my ever-respected father. Hello, father. As you spend much time in Wongsung, it has become quite familiar to update you on my well-being through letters, as though it were a regular part of my routine. However, the notable fact here is that this letter is sent not from the usual address of the Rothtailor estate but from Sylvania Academy. It feels like an end to my time in the cradle-like estate, and a step towards my goal of becoming a full-fledged mage. Although there's much unfamiliarity due to my first experience living away from home, I am constantly striving to not forget the honor of our Rothtailor lineage, just as you always advised. It's been over a month since I left the estate, a novice in many ways. The amount I've learned in this slightly over a month's time makes me appreciate the words of our retainers, that one broadens their knowledge with every new horizon. I would like to recount the numerous thrilling and amusing stories I've experienced, but fear that might bloat the content of this letter and inadvertently steal time from your imperial duties. Nonetheless, for your peace of mind, father, I am adapting reasonably well here. While it took some time to adapt to Sylvania's unique egalitarian culture and the demanding academic schedule, I now feel quite settled into the student atmosphere. Not only that, but I've met many esteemed individuals, which has greatly expanded my worldview. I had the honor of exchanging a few words with Saintess Clarice of the Telos sect, and I've managed to make what one might call friends, or at least fellow students. By hearsay, the beloved Third Imperial Princess, Phinia, is also in attendance, though I've yet to have the opportunity to meet her. A regret, indeed. I'm progressing steadily toward the goal I confidently shared before leaving, that of becoming the youngest student council president and thus elevating our family's prestige. However, it is a challenging road. Rumors have surfaced about Princess Phinia's candidacy. At this point, besting her in the election seems almost impossible. Yet I am determined to persevere against all odds. I've also met the senior Lortel whom you introduced to me. Though barely senior by age, he already embodies the complete aura of a merchant. It reminds me how far I have yet to go. The upcoming negotiations for procuring the Sage's Tome are already a source of concern for me as I represent our family. Furthermore, at school, I have met various seniors, each demonstrating extraordinary prowess in their field. Truly, as you would expect from the land of scholars that is Sylvania, many students exhibit talents rivaling active professionals. I am inspired to push myself to reach such a level of expertise. And then, there's the difficult matter of speaking about my disgraced brother. It goes without saying that he has shamed our family and should rightfully be dealt with. Yet, when I encountered him upon arriving in Sylvania, it stirred an inexplicable discomfort within me. I'm uncertain how you'll take my words. Nevertheless, as my esteemed father, I cannot veil my true experiences in dishonesty. To put it plainly, my brother seems to have made tangible improvements, busy and industrious. While they say people don't change, he almost feels like a different person. I can imagine your surprise, considering not long ago, I shared your fervor in punishing him. I'm not fully trusting of him yet. After all, as mentioned, true nature isn't so easily altered. Even if it has been a year since his expulsion, it seems unlikely for one's disposition to shift so dramatically. I cannot easily let down my guard, as I have seen his true form for years. Nonetheless, when I relax in my room at Ophelius Hall and gaze upon the sunset, memories resurface. Faint as they are, they're from a time long past, when our sister Arwen was still with us, and the three of us children shared moments together. If I were to probe these memories, I feel like my brother wasn't always the arrogant and malicious rake he became. You, father, would remember even better than me. I've had a strange dream once, situated on the gentle knoll behind our estate, where lilacs and daffodils bloom in the spring. I remember being led up the fragrant path, one hand held by Sister Arwen. The other, sturdy and secure, was possibly. It seems my letter has drifted into random musings. The excitement of updating you must have carried me away. Perhaps the longing of being so far from home, even the act of writing to you, has been a source of joy. Nevertheless, I will continue to observe my brother closely. If truly there is a reason behind his transformation, I am curious to discern what it could be. Yet if the expulsion itself was the trigger, it seems an unlikely change agent. Watching him, it feels less like a scoundrel reforming and more like he has somehow returned to his original self. It's merely my interpretation, but if there is a catalyst for regaining sanity, what could it be? Surely such a foundation for reform can't surface easily. Or if it's merely a return to form, then why did he engage in such rascality to begin with? There would be no reason. Any underlying agendas are beyond my understanding at present. It's a night filled with complex thoughts, even as the cherry blossoms flutter in the night breeze and soothe my heart, unresolved dilemmas and uncertainties cast shadows over the peaceful scene. However, upon reflection, confidence overrides worry. I have faith in my ability to succeed, a crucial sentiment. This letter has become lengthy with my ramblings. May nothing impede your great endeavors. I too shall devote myself to my studies, persistently striving to be a person worthy of our Roththaler name. With unwavering love, your daughter, Tanya Roththaler. Sarek. The tri-folded letter is neatly tucked back into its envelope. In the ornate office of the Imperial Chancellor, resplendent with decorations, Kreben Roththaler, who had been conversing with the renowned Chancellor Vandal, was momentarily lost in thought. What troubles you, Duke Kreben? Is there an urgent matter? Apologies. I just need a moment to collect my thoughts. Kreben pondered deeply upon Tanya's letter, donning a significant expression. Privately, she dubbed this, tutor mode Yenica. With her wrists resting on her hips, she inflated her chest in a showy posture. Despite a lack of dryness in her tone, she needlessly cleared her throat, exuding more endearment than gravitas. It's unclear what she thinks of herself. Having the ability to manipulate an intermediate spirit signifies that Ed shall now receive proper respect as a spirit practitioner wherever he goes. Even knowing but a couple of intermediate spirit arts before graduation would earn one exceptional student status. It does bear considerable meaning. Usually, those born with a level of magical and spirit affinity, through continuous effort, reach such a state. Now a third year, Yenica commandingly manipulates high-level spirits, a testament to an advanced tier of mastery. Ed, until last year, was unable to control even a single low-level spirit. Such growth within a year would be deemed incredulous by most. A lot of my physical health was sacrificed to get here. That won't do, Ed. Achievement is significant, but one must consider their well-being. The northern forest's visage is undeniably spring-like now. After winter. Slumbers, the fresh greenery asserts its presence. Weeds have already begun overrunning the extinguished campfire's surroundings. What was once bitter cold has now become talk of the past. The last remnants of snow in shaded areas have completely melted, and flowers blooming amid the grasses attract throngs of bees. The cabin surroundings echo the changes. A butterfly, fluttering into view, lands on top of Lucy, sunning on the cabin roof. After a few swipes with his sleeve to dismiss the butterfly without success, Lucy erupts with a roar, dispersing the persistent creature with a burst of magic. The poorly chosen adversary dissipates into nothingness. The butterfly met an unfortunate end. Given Ed's accelerated growth and increasingly fine-tuned affinity, along with the contract formed with Merylda, he should indeed manage an intermediate spirit pact. Yenneker spoke with a smile proud enough to suggest she was vicariously happy for my development. Anyway, I've carefully selected some intermediate spirits. Would you like to resonate with one? I nodded and focused magic into my eyes. The responsive ability, now worthy of a bona fide spirit practitioner, unveiled the figures of the present spirits without distortion. An astounding number of spirits, too many to count, flooded the camp surroundings. This tends to be standard where Yenneker is present. High-level spirits, ordinarily invisible without proper spirit affinity, number in the dozens, trailing after Yenneker is a sight to behold. It serves as a reminder of just how much she is adored by them. Among all this, Merylda, large as the cabin itself, coiled around a tree, and the spine-chilling Tarkon, sprawled by the river, were visible. It felt almost decadent to have such tremendous power gathered in one place, even though their most strenuous activity seemed to be lounging languidly in the pleasant spring breeze. Regardless if they were termed a spirit legion or high-level spirits, they predominantly adopted this lethargic demeanor. The number of low-level spirits was beyond tallying, with roughly 7 or 8 intermediate spirits and precisely 2 high-level ones, Merylda and Tarkon. Yenneker hasn't contracted with all of them, but the thought that she's bound to the majority is distinctly impressive. Doesn't actively leading so many spirits cause you to lose focus? Especially given your high levels of affinity, wouldn't you almost always see spirits during your daily routine? That's true. However, I've grown used to it, so it's manageable. They all like me, so there's no need to push them away. With a beam, Yenneker gently stroked a small snake ascending her forearm. Contracting an intermediate spirit is significantly different from a lower one. It's not solely about satisfactorily fulfilling magical quantity, you must find a spirit whose flow of magic resonates well with yours. Overwhelming magical power can override such concerns, but Ed, you're not quite there yet. It sounds more complicated than my pact with Merylda. Merylda aligned well with your wavelengths from the start. You're more receptive to wind and fire elements, Ed. Even so, it might be wise to avoid contracting additional wind or fire spirits now. Contracting spirits of elements one frequently manipulates could facilitate operation, yet it might hinder adaptability to diverse scenarios. Even if not reaching Yenneker's level of handling every elemental spirit, maintaining a variety across various terrains and conditions for combat readiness is ideal. To pursue an intermediate spirit pact, one normally roams hills and fields seeking resonant spirits. Hence, spirit practitioners often view their intermediate bonded spirits as almost fated. And yet, Ed's situation is quite unique. I don't have to search, it's like they've gathered in a marketplace. It's hardly a downside, right? With a giggly laugh, Yenneker waved her hand dismissively. Among the army of spirits, all manner of intermediate spirits revealed themselves. They undoubtedly looked more elite in comparison to lower spirits. From phoenixes to earthen deers, to leopards of wind and eagles scattering water. Starting from at least the size of a human torso, some approached tree size. Communications are settled with the spirits. You merely need to nominate one you believe to be efficient and agreeable in element. Nominate. Images from less than Sylvania's failed equals, swordsman equals, greater than flash across my mind, where spirit practitioner characters roam nature, engaging with fated spirits in forests and along rivers. Although not quite as synonymous with innocence as Yenneker, they all exuded a leisurely or benevolent air, less than Sylvania's greater than. Contracting with intermediate spirits often conjures notions of predestined encounters. The typical spirit practitioner's illustration, the romantic vision of gazing up spiritedly at a grandiose wolf or eagle amidst the natural landscape, epitomized such rustic charm. Number 1, Intermediate Water Spirit Pillow. Enveloped within, Stone Guardian's Blessing. I shall demonstrate a flap of wings. Here we go. I found myself idly watching a line of intermediate spirits enter beside the campfire, one by one. A mug had landed on my shoulder at some point, yet my mind wandered. Despite my status as a lowly spirit, I was eyeing the spirits while making a hem sound. Yenika, just a moment, the name, it feels kind of strange. Strange. Did you perhaps overdo it today? If it's tough, shall we do it next time? It's not that. No, not at all, forget it. Then, let's continue. Number 2. As I looked over the spirits filing in one by one, I was engulfed in a strange discomfort that I couldn't quite put into words. A romantic encounter with elemental spirits frolicking in nature, and the destiny-laden contract. The fresh illustration of a girl rubbing her face against a massive wolf in the dense forest. Is this right? I feel more like I'm in a used car market than in a contract with a spirit. Is this really proper? The queen has fallen. She was too slow to defend against the blade of a knight who charged from the side. A clergyman who witnessed it strikes at the knight's neck urgently, but it's too late. The dead queen will not return. The enemy soldiers advance again while the king hastily retreats behind the castle walls. Another knight pressures a corner of the rampart, the soldiers hurry to form a defense line, but there's no retreat left. In the end, watching his soldiers dying in his stead while hiding miserably behind the wall, the king quietly chooses to end his own life. Checkmate. Less than half of Fionia's pieces remained on the chessboard. Do you have many worries, Princess Fionia? The freshman welcome party. This event that takes place in the Student Union Hall at the beginning of the semester is a routine task for seniors, but it's a meaningful day for freshmen filled with excitement about their first semester. Seniors are talents honed over years at Sylvania, home to many legendary figures. Most are capable enough in their fields, spurring freshmen to want to connect with them when they have the chance. Unlike freshmen, existing students are not strictly required to attend. However, the academic board does encourage certain students to participate. From each grade, a few top students really should attend to save face for the existing student body. Without seniors, freshmen's enthusiasm will be meaningless. Typically, top students of each grade are recommended to attend. But they can choose not to if they decline. Lucy Mayrill, the second-year top student, a major concern for freshmen, reported her absence due to personal reasons, a nap. Of course, the faculty somewhat expected this. But no one thought that Yenika Failover, the diligent top student of the third year who usually attends school events, would drop out citing personal reasons, spiritual lessons with Ed as well. The freshman welcome party seemed less grand with only 2 top students attending. However, when Princess Fionia, at the college's request, decided to join, all absenteeism became meaningless. Just by Fionia's presence, the freshmen clearly realized the wide spectrum of Sylvania students. A noble girl among the sophomores of Sylvania Academy, perhaps the most distinguished. None among all freshmen have a status high enough to even converse face-to-face with her. Even at Sylvania Academy, which espouses an egalitarian culture, when the other party are royal blood, it's different. The common riffraff and nearly collapsing minor nobility didn't dare approach, and even highborns would sneak glances cautiously, while children of influential families would try to muster courage, only to swallow their breath and turn back when they neared the VIP seat where she sat. In the end, only one person at the welcome party truly engaged her in conversation, a loyal follower of the royal family and the heir of the Callamore family, one of the 3 great swordsmanship houses. First-year top student, Wade Callamore, an acquaintance of Princess Fionia. You seemed hesitant with every move. A chill-inducing white mane of hair fluttered in the window breeze several times. You're tough to play, Wade. Far from it. If you played properly, I couldn't possibly have stood a chance. But I did play properly. No, Princess. You knew the clever move, yet you chose not to make it. Wade toyed with a few fallen soldiers' pieces in his hand, rolling them through his fingers. In sacrificing soldiers, one must not hesitate, Princess Fionia. Thank you for the advice, but I've had enough for now. If we're applying theories of monarchy to a mere game of chess, we'll only begin an endless lesson. Maybe it brings back unpleasant memories. The royal tutors who used to teach me in the palace liked to metaphorically apply such games to teach a lesson. Wade and Fionia conversed quietly. Other students, standing at a distance, couldn't dare to intrude on their exchange. Wade could afford such conversation, being the traditional royal family loyalist. Wade, you'd have said something similar. Dwelling too much on sacrificial moves, one might miss reading the macro situation of the battlefield. Indeed, Princess Fionia. Wade had long understood Fionia's sullen reflection. Princess Fionia of royal tenderness wandering the palace had a much different ambiance back then. Back in the day, she was proactive, positive, ready to take action at any time for her country, a monarch with a momentum that pushed matters forward vigorously, although farthest from the disputes for the throne among the three princesses. However, Fionia viewed at Sylvania again seemed deflated, like a balloon emptied of air. Whatever happened, her signature self-assuredness, which she always carried like armor, had completely vanished. Wade was well aware of the reality behind those lifeless eyes. They were eyes of someone subsisting on a series of failures or continuous pressure. You've had a lot to deal with in Sylvania. Just, more self-aware, that's all. Princess Fionia gazed earnestly at the lifted chess piece, a pawn. A pawn, used and discarded as a sacrificial lamb, or earning promotions with distinguished service, but ultimately a marionette, moving and acting at the monarch's command. The sacrifice and death of a single pawn, concern and worry for such minute details can impede any significant achievement. I thought I was superior to anyone when it came to understanding people. I agree, but realizing that you could be wrong is an important virtue. It indicates you have maturely grown, princess. I don't know. Buried in the sofa of the VIP seat, Fionia stared blankly at the ceiling. Inevitably overlapping was Ed Rothtaylor. It was useless to cover her ears, she heard all about him, no matter how. Soldiers on a battlefield are used as sacrificial lambs out of strategic necessity. A monarch with a macroscopic vision makes rational, all-encompassing decisions. However, Ed Rothtaylor's downfall was not such a calculated strategic decision. It was the result of short-sightedness and narrow vision. Even if Ed Rothtaylor had used Princess Fionia solely to escape the darkness of the Rothtaylor family, the result would be the same. Princess Fionia knew this possibility and yet didn't change her approach towards Ed. At first, he was just a thorn in her throat, a minor fault, and she ignored the person Ed was. But over time, he made his presence known in the academy, overturning evaluations, intervening in academy crises, saving Yenica, surviving the wild forest with gritted teeth, earning recognition, and even ranking among the capable in the third year. Despite this, Fionia stubbornly turned away from him. The reason why? After thorough consideration, Fionia found the answer. Overcome by an unbearable sense of shame, she consciously disregarded Ed. His very existence, leading a solid and exemplary life, achieving results, was evidence exposing Fionia's faults. How childish and one-dimensional the sentiment. It's a delusion to think that by covering eyes and shrinking away, she would be rid of guilt. The vulgar sense of relief that hiding under the noble title of princess, no one would demand retribution. It's as shameful as if a child, eyes covered and ears sealed, believes everything will cease to exist, the utmost disgrace. She was only able to realize this because, this was Sylvania. In the Clarel royal house, a royal's word is law and order. Chess pieces abandoned due to wrongful judgment all die smiling, not struggling, they don't flail from pain. Whatever consequence arises from Fionia's misjudgment, it's all intrinsically correct. But here, in Sylvania Academy, virtues of learning outweigh noble status. Most abandoned chess pieces, cry tears of blood, grind teeth in curses, and meet a miserable end. The difference is substantial, the weight on her shoulders takes a different course. I'm just scared. She closed her eyes once. Ed Rothtaylor, bloodied, raises his head from the abyss. Dragging his mutilated body, he brings his face close to Fionia's eyes and speaks. You did this to me. I'm a good and honest person, but my life was ruined due to your petty judgment. Yet, I clenched my teeth and survived to stand here on both feet. I resent and hate you. Princess. I'm sorry, Wade. I was just lost in thought. Lifting her head in a flash, Fionia brushed her elegant platinum hair and took a deep breath. But it helped me sort through my thoughts quite a bit. It's not good to keep running from mistakes forever. That's foolish. I'm glad to hear you've made progress. Once the problem is recognized, one should plan to improve. Princess Fionia managed to pull herself from the swamp of gloom just barely, gripping her consciousness. As she put the chess pieces back in their places, Fionia murmured to herself. Whatever it is, start anew, sift through and apologize if needed. I should meet Ed Rothtailor as soon as possible to sort things out. With that thought, Princess Fionia recalled her schedule. Given her busy status, even important events require 4 days to free up time. 3 days, if she moves swiftly. And with minimal escorts, go to Ed Rothtailor's camp. Sit across the campfire and have a straight talk, laying everything down. She resolved and nodded gently. The gloomy feeling slightly lifted, and a clear way forward seemed apparent. It was a refreshing feeling after a long while. The news of Ed Rothtailor's death reached Princess Fionia on the morning of the 3rd day. The deadly imprint, a sinister runic circle etched along the blade of a sharp dagger, was ominous. The master engraver hired by the Rothtailor family spent day and night to perfect the virulent magic, which causes agonizing death upon the slightest contact. The cost of inscribing this single mark was not counted by Krebin Rothtailor, enough gold coins, for sure. Carefully to not nick even a fingertip, Krebin sheathed the dagger and handed it to his reliable aide. The aide, under his robe, received the dagger with formality, and assistants on either side knelt before Krebin. He had left a message for Tanya Rothtailor. Her burden seemed heavy between student council election duties and the buying negotiation of the hermit's seals with Lortel, so he'd send trustworthy vassals as helpers. The academy was likely to permit it, he cited, since it was for business purposes. But the true purpose behind dispatching vassals wasn't to assist Tanya. There was a more sinister reason lurking beneath. Back in his room, Krebin removed a glove from his right hand. He placed the hand, engraved with ghastly patterns, above a crystal ball, unleashing a tremendous magical force. One of the powers, Mebular, the dark god, granted Krebin Rothtailor deterministic causality. A high-level magic that projects the result onto the crystal ball by specifying certain actions or variables he caused. It requires massive magic power to use frequently, but being able to check the outcome of an action before an important affair, it's an ability near cheating. Eventually, the result blossomed atop the crystal. Displayed was a cliff in pouring rain, seemingly the coast near the north of Akan Island. Ed Rothtailor in the crystal ball, after a suffocatingly fierce battle, wounded to the brim, is finally stabbed straight in the abdomen by the unsheathed dagger of the vassal. He spewed dark blood from his mouth, stepping back gradually. A girl with pinkish hair arrived late and screamed. The vassal pulled out the dagger and kicked Ed, tumbling down the daunting cliff. The girl with pinkish hair, doused in rain, ran frantically toward the cliff. Her glancing back at the vassal with head bowed ends the crystal ball's projection. Sitting at his executive desk, Krebin put his glove back on, exhaling softly. Not a pleasant feeling, I admit. Yet his expression remained unchanged. Nevertheless, a necessary sacrifice. Chapter 90, Student Council Election Campaign 3. Impossible. The weight of those 3 characters felt like a heavy pressure on my chest. During my time as a freshman at Sylvania, Tanya had been clearly aware of it. If Fionia truly runs for student council president, no matter what measures Tanya takes, she could not win against her. An image filled with conviction built up since her time in the royal household, the powerful recognition known to any citizen of the Clarel Empire, coupled with her own unfavorable status as a mere freshman, and Fionia well supported by a solid base among the students. No matter what variables might occur, Tanya's chances of winning were absolutely zero. Tanya Rothtailor could not defeat Fionia Elias Clarel. That was an unchangeable truth. No one knew this better than Tanya herself. Reality and romance are distinctly different. Tanya engraved this truth into her heart as she entered her academic life. Before enrollment, her fantasies of Sylvania were like a magical castle in a dream. However, once a dream is realized, it becomes mere reality. One cannot always live trapped in romance, tasks and assignments must be tackled and will inevitably pile up. Tanya was slowly growing up, and the first thing she realized was that dreams are dreams and reality is reality. While entering Sylvania was a joyous occasion, the hope that everything would flow romantically and beautifully had to be discarded early on. Surely, things won't always go as planned, not all moments will be filled with happiness. Even in Sylvania, there's no guarantee of encountering only admirable people, nor can I always expect the esteemed seniors to take a liking to me. Still, she mustn't be disheartened. As the heiress of the Rothtaylor family, she must always maintain her confidence and poise as a young lady. Showing any pettiness here would tarnish the name of her family. Tanya nodded to herself, determined to persevere with resilience through the academic life that often didn't go as planned. Of course, academic life did not flow as expected. Oh, Tanya, heading to elemental studies practice. Any trouble with the lessons? Be careful of the temperature differences day and night to avoid catching a cold, and sometime let's have tea with Elka. On the way to practice with her elemental studies classmates, Zix greeted her cheerily, much to the murmurs of her peers. Isn't that Zix-senpai? A prominent figure well known throughout the school year, and even among the entire student body. Wow, Tanya seems to have a personal acquaintance with Zix-senpai. Well, if it's the Rothtaylor family's second daughter, her connections wouldn't be ordinary. You look well, that's good to see, Tanya. I have been thinking about arranging a meeting for the talisman trade negotiations. When are you free? Let me know a convenient time, and I will prepare a spot for you. While Tanya was dining with classmates in the student cafeteria, Lortel approached her with a smile and brought up business matters. That must be Lortel-senpai, surely. The representative of the Elk Trading House's Akan branch. Wow, Tanya, to have a familiar relationship with the true power holder of the Elk Trading House. Considering the talk of negotiations and trades, it seems she also has personal dealings with them. Wow, despite being the same age, her world seems so much larger. Surely, she must be accustomed to these business discussions and formal settings. Hello. After the day's academic courses ended, and on her way back to the dormitory, Lucy, who was walking zombie-like with a drowsy manner, greeted Tanya casually before they parted ways on the path. There was nothing particularly grand about it, just a petite hand wave as a greeting, and then she continued on her way. That person is Lucy Mayriel-senpai, widely regarded as the top genius of Sylvania, right? It's the first time I've seen senpai speak. I didn't even know she spoke. They say she treats everyone indifferently, making it impossible to get close. How did Tanya manage to become acquaintances who exchange greetings? Truly, the expanse of our connections is worlds apart. What can I say? It feels like there's a wall separating us. Tanya returned to the Ophelius dormitory with her year mates, leaving behind students who looked up to her in awe. In recent days, Tanya's status and reputation within the academy seemed to have inexplicably skyrocketed. Especially among peers who look up to her senior students, Tanya's standing seemed to have been bolstered for maintaining connections with various influential figures. Her status as the Rothtaylor family's second daughter alone was formidable enough, but now even more so in Sylvania's culture, which values academic and personal achievements, her influence only continued to grow. As an antagonist young lady, even followers had started to appear around her. Walking down the corridor of Ophelius dormitory, following Tanya were two girls, Kylie and Terry, holding hands and talking with blissful expressions. Truly, Tanya, poised in action, with wide connections, yet not boastful, so admirable. Such nobility must surely be innate. If I could even emulate half of such dignified grace, I would have no regrets. Even though Terry might be excused, it was a little funny that Kylie spoke of nobility and such. Reaching her room, Tanya glanced back. She couldn't overtly laugh, oh-ho-ho, and show high tension, but also couldn't show a discouraged face from excessive attention. Yufufu. Well done to both of you for getting through today's schedule. You must be tired from various things, so you should go rest soon. Of course, Tanya. You also worked really hard today. We'll keep up the spirit tomorrow, too. We'll follow you no matter where. The formal speech among the first-year students already felt strange. Let's work hard tomorrow and the day after to become someone as graceful and capable as Tanya. When Terry said that, Tanya smiled softly and responded, "Oh, that's a good attitude. Though I still have many shortcomings, if you polish yourself daily, Terry, you too will become a student just as remarkable. Let's keep up the effort tomorrow." Leaving behind students shooting admiring gazes, Tanya closed her room door and then leaned against it, sweating coldly as her eyes searched without focus. "I didn't do anything, did I?" Before she knew it, a fandom had formed around Tanya among the freshmen. How did this happen? Certainly, a headache. The next day, 2 servants from the Rothtaylor main house arrived, both familiar faces. "It's a pleasure to see you again after so long, Miss Tanya. It's heartwarming to see you healthy. We've heard you're working hard with your studies. We're grateful to be of assistance. Sylvania Academy is filled with noble students. If all students were allowed to bring their personal secretaries and maids, the influx of external staff would disrupt the Academy's tranquility. Therefore, the Academy strictly prohibits students from bringing personal staff within the faculty area. Instead, for the convenience of nobly born students, Sylvania provides high-level service through a dedicated maid department at Ophelius Dormitory. The only exceptions who could enjoy freedom from these rules within Sylvania are the princess and the saintess. Thus, ordinarily, it would have been difficult for the external servants of the Rothtaylor family to obtain residence permission inside Sylvania. My father must have been quite concerned. It's good to see you, Caddick, Knox. The 2 servants named kneeled and bowed their heads deeply. These were loyal servants who had served since Tanya was young, so trusted that even their strict housemaster Krebin would assign them important tasks without hesitation. Tanya was deeply grateful for these loyal servants being dispatched all the way to Aachen. Normally, dispatching personal secretaries for students like this would be prohibited by the Academy, but we could come in under the guise of business reasons. Since the Academy is already aware of the transaction with Elk Trading House. That's right. Therefore, after we wrap up the negotiations regarding the purchase of the Sage's scripts, we will likely have to leave the Academy again. It's a particularly busy time for freshmen at the start of the new school year. Facing a rush of classes and events, Tanya not only has to deal with the student council election but also lead the negotiations for the Sage's scripts. Managing even one of these tasks seems overwhelming for Tanya, so family support is naturally expected. I, Caddick, will gather market information for the purchase of the scripts and inquire about the budget status of the Elk Trading House. I will confirm the specifics of the negotiation schedule and report back to you. Thank you, Caddick. I, Knox, will coordinate the schedule related to the student council election while Miss Tanya concentrates on her studies. Especially since there are rumors of Princess Phenia running, we need to get information on what policy proposals her camp might put forward. That's all right, Knox. Yes. Tanya, sitting at her desk and arranging her hair, sighed deeply. As she paused from stroking her golden locks, she looked up at the clear sky of early spring. You two must not have updated information since you've just arrived. There's been fresh news this morning. From Tanya's perspective, it's clearly a stroke of luck. Clenching his fist tightly and raising it to the sky with a cheer wouldn't be strange given the situation. However, Tanya didn't seem quite as elated. The reason for this was unknown, even to Tanya herself. Tanya said Princess Phenia isn't running for student president. What? It's as if lightning struck on a clear day. A disaster that hits without any forewarning. The Student Council building, Nail Hall, is the largest of the 3 buildings and serves as the bustling center of campus life, especially during the semester. Although Yenica had demolished it in a fit last year, it's been completely restored and is now fully functional. The crowded Student Council Hall, with administrative services and well-being facilities all congregated here, resembles a busy marketplace. Crystalline ice floats in 2 glasses of citrus juice on a wooden table. Since I owe Yenica for various favors, I took care of the bill. The royal secretary just made an announcement at the royal quarters. It's the hottest gossip, just happened a few hours ago. Everyone's buzzing about it. Yenica sips her juice with a radiant smile, her delight seeming boundless with every sip. She's a girl who truly appreciates small kindnesses. So, she only made an announcement, can it still be retracted? Well, most students who wanted to support Princess Phinia are now pleading for her to reconsider their request. Furrowing my brows, I plunged into contemplation. Phinia has to become involved if you're to take on Krebin Rothtailor, the final boss of Act 4. After all, it's difficult to find a clan that could vie with the Rothtailor family's power aside from someone of Princess Phinia's stature. Head of the Rothtailor household, Krebin. Rothtailor's manner of conducting affairs is nearly flawless, and most folks wouldn't suspect him of being a villain. Even if they did, they wouldn't have any evidence. It is Phinia, having first become aware of Krebin's dark schemes, who begins to openly oppose him. What had been instinctual suspicion evolves into conviction as she encounters Krebin in her role as student president. Furthermore, the academic power wielded by Phinia as student president is a crucial advantage in protecting Sylvania Academy from Krebin's aspirations. While imperial power is vast, influencing the intricate and granular affairs of the academy internally proves challenging. A fusion of imperial and academic power. Only once Phinia holds both reins can she truly lead a proper defense against Krebin. If we're to capture Krebin, the Rothtailor family must be pitted against Princess Phinia from now on. Should this come to pass, Phinia would become an irreplaceable ally, a fact that should have been self-evident. As I was deep in thought, Yenika's face suddenly filled my view. Leaning close with puffed cheeks, she started to grumble. Why so worried? Listen, Ed. Yenika stood swiftly from her seat and moved beside me firmly. She placed her hands on her hips and looked at me with a feigned anger, for Yenika rarely becomes truly angry, her actions were more demonstrative than genuine. I have a feeling you're plunging into another reckless endeavor. Hey, that's not. We all have our own wills, Ed, and while I can't tell you what to do or not, I can't just stand by and watch you get hurt or bleed without doing anything. Her expression turned petulant as she continued. If there's something on your mind, consult me. Whatever it is, I'll help. Yenika, I owe you a lot already. For your help with spirit summons and the camp. That's only debt if I consider it so. And I don't. Sincerity underlined her playful words. I wish you wouldn't struggle on your own. There's no need to go looking for trouble. Quote. It was a difficult decision, but ignoring the earnest gaze of Yenika's staring eyes was even harder. I think it would be better if Princess Phinia became the student president. That is something some might think, not just you. She smoothly accepted the sudden disclosure. And yet, it's surprising. Princess Phinia has been quite cruel to you, Ed. I didn't think you'd support her. Really. In truth, Ed Rothtailor is no more, thanks to Phinia. Sure. And there's Tanya as well. I had thought to support Tanya, considering everything, her reputation is good among the freshmen. Yenika kept talking as she twirled a braid. And, if the individual herself chooses not to run, what can we do about it? That's true, but, ordinarily, Princess Phinia should have run for president without a second thought and probably have won by a significant margin over Tanya. However, it remains a mystery why she has opted out altogether. At least knowing the reason she's not running would be helpful. Confidence is lost. Thud. Another cup of beverage lands heavily on the table. Zix Effelstein of the second-year magical department has joined. It's warm enough to go without a coat now. Didn't expect to break a sweat. Why are there so many people at the student council hall? Zix removed his coat and took a swig from his drink. Zix. Such a familiar face, and you two being so cozy in broad daylight. Quite the spectacle, though I suppose it's your freedom. Zix puts down his cup. Following these words, Yenika straightened her back, widening the before close distance between them, as if just realizing the proximity. What? Was it that close? Is it really that close? Is it, really? Oh, it's close, isn't it? And for you to say it's sizzling, that's too indecent. Embarrassed, Yenika fanned herself vigorously, avoiding eye contact before slumping forward. Sorry to disturb your private conversation, but there's something I didn't get to mention last time, a certain conviction as of late. Zix crossed his arms and sighed. Being classmates and attending many classes together, I've seen Princess Phinia quite often, haven't I? Zix was raised in the wilds of the northern steppe, living more as a beast than a human. Now, he has learned to conduct himself with the manners of a gentleman through his time with the Islan family. His primal upbringing gave him an extraordinary intuition, senses that go beyond normal human perception. Have you ever seen an alpha wolf lose its pack, Mr. Ed? The playful tone had turned solemn. An alpha who has led its pack to ruin through a misjudgment is devoid of life in its eyes. It's a stark contrast to the vibrant gaze of youth, neither preying when encountering prey nor showing aggression to predators. Zix spoke softly of his experiences, recalling wolves on the steppe, ignoring his weapon despite the threat. They show no response, even if you aim an arrow right at them. Then, opening his eyes, Zix confided quietly, "To me, that's how Princess Phenia's eyes looked." After speaking, Zix stood up to take his leave. "I apologize for intruding. I just wanted to greet a familiar face." "Take care." "No intrusion, I'm glad you came. There's talk of spring rain tomorrow. Remember that when leaving the dormitory." Zix grabbed his empty drink and, hunched, bid farewell before winding through the exit. With Yenica still fanning herself beside him, Ed was plunged back into thought. The worst-case scenario is Phenia having lost her will to oppose the Rothtaylor family. If so, one must find a way to rekindle her animosity against them, but at present, there appears to be no way to do so. "It appears I must steel myself." "Why so serious, Ed?" Creben Rothtaylor, head of the family, had succumbed early to debilitating politics, because he lacked the support of the imperial faction led by Phenia. Confronting Creben without such backing is an unknown territory. While a scenario best avoided, facing it directly may soon be unavoidable. Well, rain is due tomorrow, perfect for practicing with water spirits. For now, focus on what must be done. A session with an intermediate spirit near the northern cliffs sounds suitable. "Yeah, I'll try to join after my elemental science class." "Thank you. I better head back to camp for now." Yenica nodded genially. Ed owed her much in truth. Sniffing the air brings a floral scent. Spring is a favored season. With its gentle sunlight and whispering breezes, the wait becomes as comfortable as being wrapped in a warm blanket. Footsteps crunch on grass, approaching the camp. A girl, lounging on the cabin roof, looks up at the sky, humming to herself at the thought of resting on a boy's lap while munching pieces of jerky. A sudden dampness at the tip of her nose confirms her instincts. Lucy pulls her hat down and gazes up. Though it's spring, it seems she might not be able to go out tomorrow. Looks like rain. Rain is unpleasant. The continuous patter dampens her mood. She'd prefer if it passed quickly. With that thought, Lucy jumped down beside the crackling fire, watching the approaching blonde boy while absent-mindedly humming.